Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 928, Wednesday, October the 16th, 2019. Thank you so much for tuning in. Let's see. Okay, boy, we have some things to talk about today. Okay, so just want to follow up on a story that I did yesterday and talked about a little bit even the day before, and that's the story about that George Papagalopoulos put up on his Twitter page about Comey and Mifsud meeting in Australia, along with another Australian intelligence official and the chief of staff for Alexander Down the Hatch Downer, and then of course Clapper coming into town shortly after that. That's what was being up on Papagalopoulos' Twitter. So I've been digging into that for the past several hours, and I finally got the original source of where this is coming from. And so the original story from the original source, there's actually two sources that give you both sides of the picture. You put them together, I'll tell you what you get, and then from there, it's almost like it's the logical leap that this meeting occurred, even though the original stories do not say that the meeting occurred between these people. It simply places all these people at the same place at about the same time. So the original source of the story that Papagalopoulos is working from comes from two sources. The first is abc.net.au, abc.net.au, and the second source is a newsletter that comes from somewhere called the Journal of Maltese Diaspora. It's a newsletter that is published in Malta, where Mifsud is from. So these are the two original sources that eventually lead to the story that Papagalopoulos is following, that he put up on his Twitter, that suggests that Comey met with Mifsud in Australia along with Alexander Down the Hatch Downer's chief of staff and another Australian intelligence official. So here's what we know. That's the story on Papagalopoulos' Twitter. But here is the facts reported in the original two sources. First, the abc.net.au. It's the abc.net.au source that reports that James Clapper flew to Australia on March the 15th, 2016. And that story says that James Comey was also there at that time. So they're placing both Comey and Clapper in Australia at or around March the 15th of 2016. And they were likely there for a couple days. Now we can assume that they were meeting some sort of government officials or intelligence officials or something like that. They probably weren't there simultaneously on vacation. We can assume it had something to do with government business. But it doesn't say that in the article. It only says that Clapper flew there on March the 15th of 2016 at the same time that Comey was there in Australia. That is the report that came from abc.net.au. But then there's another source, and this is from something called the Journal of Maltese Diaspora. It is essentially a newsletter that has wide distribution throughout Malta, which is where Mifsud is from. And in this newsletter, it says that Mifsud was in Australia for a summit, a world summit on uncontrolled migration. He was in the south of Australia. The dates of the 2 days of the summit were March 8th and March 9th. And so that puts Mifsud in Australia, in this case they say South Australia, at about the same time, within a couple of days of when Clapper and Comey are reported to have been there by abc.net.au. So when you put together the story from abc.net.au of Comey and Clapper being in Australia on or around March 15th of 2016, and the story coming out of this newsletter in Malta that Mifsud was there to attend this summit at about the same time that Comey and Clapper were there, somehow that turned into the story that these guys met. Then there's some sort of a internet researcher whom I've never heard of, and I'm not sure if he's Australian or Brit or US. I don't know who he is. Never heard of him, but he has a couple posts on Papagalopoulos' Twitter page where he's responding to Papagalopoulos' comments as well as some other people. And in that, he adds his own additional information, which is how we get the angle of Alexander Down the Hatch's Downer's chief of staff being involved in these meetings, and also this other intelligence chief from Australia. He adds those parts and then sort of puts the story together. Now, because I don't know this person, I don't know if this person has any credibility or not. But obviously, Papagalopoulos trusts this person because this person is a Twitter friend of Papagalopoulos. He's some sort of an independent researcher or whatever. So he is the one that I think is taking these two facts, putting them together with some other facts that he has gained, and I'm not sure what his sources are because he doesn't really show his sources. And then I assume he's the one that builds the narrative around the two reports that we know that are verified. So that is as clear as I can get you on this particular story. And, you know, it is interesting. We do have the facts. We don't have any actual hard evidence that a meeting took place between anyone. We only have hard evidence that Mifsud was there for a summit. Comey and Clapper were there also in Australia during the same week of 2016, early March. And it was about a week, 10 days later, that Mifsud shows up in Rome and first makes contact with Papagalopoulos. So this is kind of the background of everything, and this is the only known reported facts that are actually out there surrounding this story or this narrative. So whether you believe it or not, it's up to you. I don't know. I'll call 50-50 on this one. We know that Clapper and Comey were there. We know that Mifsud was there. That's all we really know for sure. Was there a meeting? I don't know. I would think it's very likely. It's very probable. I'm pretty sure Comey and Clapper weren't there on vacation. We know why Mifsud was there. He was there for some international summit. So it looks awful sketchy, certainly. And it's easy to believe the narrative because, you know, of the players and what happened after that, and the fact that they were in such close proximity at such a close period of time. It's certainly it's a plausible narrative to lay out. It just isn't backed by 100% facts. It's some facts that are sort of morphed into a narrative. So that's the best I can do. If anyone can get any more information on that, I would love to hear about it. But that's as close as I can get at this point to trying to verify this information that's on Papagalopoulos' Twitter page. He obviously believes it because he's, you know, promoting it. So maybe he knows something I don't know, and it's very likely. It's George Papagalopoulos. So he probably has some other sources I don't know about. But anyway, that is what's going on with that story, and I'll continue to follow it and see if we can confirm any more about this story, or if any more evidence comes to light, or if anyone picks up on the story, because still at this point, there just simply aren't hardly any of the normal people I look at. When a story like this pops, I'll go look at Conservative Treehouse, I'll go look at PJ Media. I'll go look at maybe Breitbart. I'll go look at maybe Town Hall. I'll go look at maybe National Sentinel. I'll go look at, Citizen Free Press. I'll scan certain types of news places where these types of stories would show up. And I'm just not seeing it really anywhere other than the Gateway Pundit and Papaglopoulos' Twitter feed, and then a bunch of other people's Twitter feeds who are copying it. So, but when you track down, go back to the original source, it's this two sources I just gave you, and there's nothing else really out there. So we'll continue to follow it and see what we can learn. There you go. Are you thoroughly confused now? Okay. Well, it looks like Madam Botox has told the Demo commies in the Demo commie caucus that there will be no floor vote on impeachment. But she will continue, however, with the secret impeachment proceedings. So what does that tell us? Well, it tells us, obviously, that she knows that she probably can't or doesn't want to force those Democrats in states that, or districts that are red districts, basically states Trump won. She doesn't want to force them to have to take the vote. She doesn't want to have an actual real impeachment hearing where the minority party would get to call witnesses, would get to subpoena people, would be able to cross-examine witnesses. The president would have legal counsel, all these things. She doesn't want any of that to happen because it would expose that this is one gigantic plot. She also really doesn't want to have the vote because even if she could get all those people and get enough votes, and she probably could whip people into shape, put enough pressure on them, she probably could get the votes, but then it goes over to the Senate, where the trial is held in the Senate Judiciary Committee, where likely, even if McConnell went forward with it, which I'm not so sure he would, based on the flimsy evidence, but even if they produced some decent evidence and they went through the trial, over there, it's the Senate Republicans that control it, and they would likely call in people like Joe Biden, Hunter Biden, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and you can imagine all the Democrats that are caught up and corrupt in Ukraine. The whole point of this exercise on Pelosi's part is to try to overshadow the real Ukraine corruption and crimes with this fake hoax to try to provide some protection for her and other Democrats that are exposed in Ukraine. And of course, the Rotten Reverend Clinton and John Brennan and other people they're just simply trying to get the Rotten Reverend Clinton wants Biden out so she can jump in. And Brennan, who's probably involved in some way in this, because these people have connections to him, he's just trying to get rid of Trump. So I guess, or maybe try to intimidate someone to try to save his ass, which he probably knows is going to be fried. So everybody has a lot of motives going on here, but the overall motive is not to actually produce real evidence of real crimes to get an impeachment. It's everything but that. And ultimately, this is going to, I think, backfire big time on Democrats. And I'm predicting that if they continue this, it's going to blow up in their face. It's already pretty much blowing up in their face already, but it could get really bad for them. And I think it's a very dangerous, desperate political move. But at this point, it makes sense because the Democrats are desperate. This is a desperate move by desperate people. Next, we have Sidney Powell filing a motion to get more Brady material from the Department of Justice. And she specifically outlines two very interesting pieces of Brady material that she wants. Get a load of this. She is looking for two Blackberries, two phones, two Blackberries. And she actually provides all the details on these two phones. The make, the model, the manufacturer, the serial number, and the whole 9 yards. She specifically identifies the two Blackberries or phones that she wants from the DOJ. And why does she want these two phones? Well, because these are two U.S. government-issued phones that were being used by Joseph Mifsud. Joseph Mifsud had two U.S. government-issued devices, Blackberries to be exact. Why do you think Mifsud had two U.S. government-issued telecommunication devices? And why have they withheld that? Now, apparently, according to the statement, the DOJ has recently come into these items, meaning that probably Barr and Durham somehow uncovered these or discovered these, and they may now have these 2 items, which apparently were given to Mifsud by U.S. government. We would assume that would be the FBI. So in response to that, the Department of Justice has responded to that Brady request, to that court motion by Sidney Powell, who's representing Michael Flynn, of course. And they're saying that they will only produce the phones if the data or metadata, they will only produce the phones and including the data and metadata, because she specifically said, I want the phones, the data, and the metadata. She wants that. DOJ said they're only going to produce the phones, the data, and metadata if they, the Department of Justice, determine that the phones are relevant to Flynn's sentencing. They're only going to produce the phones and the metadata if they, meaning the DOJ, determine that the phones are relevant to Flynn's sentencing. How many of you think that the DOJ is going to conclude that the phones do not or are not relevant to Flynn's sentencing? I'm thinking everybody. They're not going to turn over the phones and the metadata, and whether or not William Barr will get involved in this or his deputy, I don't know. But it doesn't appear Barr seems to be taking a hands-off approach to this entire Flynn thing, which I thought he would come in and just shut it down. It's obviously fraudulent, but maybe this is part of his case, or maybe not. Maybe we're all living in a giant delusion. We don't know yet, do we? It's like day by day we go through this sort of nightmare, watching the corruption, watching the crimes. We know what the evidence is. It's right in front of our face. Barr's sitting on top of it. So is Durham. The members of Congress are sitting on it. Most of it's out in the public domain anyway, but no one seems to be doing anything about it. So it kind of leaves you to believe that someone may be running a game on us. All of our hope, all of our dreams are pretty much on Attorney General Barr, which makes me a little nervous. I tend to think he's a straight arrow. I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, but every day that I see more and more evidence that things are going on that probably shouldn't be going on in the Department of Justice, it makes me a little, hesitant. But that's the facts, my friends. I can't, all I can do is tell you what's happening. I can't always tell you why. Sometimes I try, but I don't know, probably any more than most of you. I'm just a good guesser, I guess, some of the time. Well, that person, a person who testified to Congress in the Bug-Eyed Fools committee hearing yesterday, Fiona Hill, apparently we learned that she was not working at the White House at the time when the phone call took place between Trump and the Prime Minister of Ukraine. She wasn't even working there at the time. But she was still disturbed by the call, hearing about it. Why in the world she's even being called as a witness is beyond me. She offers nothing. Besides, we've got the transcript. Why do we care what a employee in the White House, regardless of what their position is, thinks about the president's phone call? Why do we care? Why should anyone care? Why should that make her a witness? She's not a witness to anything. She has an opinion about a phone call she heard about. But we've got the whole phone call. This is just why this whole thing is a complete farce. But we learned some things about this person, Fiona Hill. We learned that she worked for George Soros for 6 years. She was a former White House advisor, and she was involved as an advisor on European and Russian affairs. She worked for the George Soros Open Society for 6 years, and she is a longtime member of the CFR, the Council on Foreign Relations. Probably an Obama holdover. In fact, she is an Obama holdover. Who in the world put this person into Trump's White House? Why has Trump's White House since day one been full of people who hate him, who disagree with his policy? Because now they're all coming out of the woodwork. They've been leaking for 3 years, nearly 3 years since he's been president. These are the people who've been leaking and lying. Now they're coming out as whistleblowers. They're Obama holdovers. They're people who work for Soros. They're part of coup plots. They're part of all this stuff. Who in the world put these people into the Trump White House to work there? Who in the world put these people in those positions? And why are they walking around free after committing sedition? My oh my. Rudy Giuliani is saying that he is not going to comply with the congressional subpoena. Yeah, I didn't think he would. I wouldn't either if I were him. In fact, nobody in Trump's orbit, no Republican, nobody with any sanity should take part in Schiff's witch hunt. It's a joke. They should be laughing at him. Of course, many of you have seen the ABC interview with Hunter Biden. It was not an interview. It was not an interview. Even though, in the so-called interview, he admits that having the name Biden has brought him a lot of opportunities most people wouldn't have. I guess what I noticed watching that interview, it seemed to me that he was reading from scripts. It seemed to me that his eyes, and he kept darting this way, like she's sitting in front of him, but when he would go to answer questions, he would look over like this, and he would look like something like he was reading something, then he would turn back and say something, and he kept doing this, like he was reading off of a cue card. Clearly that was a setup. He was fully prepared to do that. The questions, he knew what questions were coming. He was totally prepped. The questions were prepped. The answers were prepped. It was a complete show. And he still looked bad. Didn't fool me, and I'm pretty sure it didn't fool a lot of you. And the so-called reporter, not a reporter, didn't dig at all. And she let him get away with a huge lie when he said he didn't get any of that money from the $1.5 billion from China. Well, she's either stupid or doesn't know how these things work. Yeah, he may not have gotten paid directly $1.5 billion from the Chinese right now, but he owns the damn hedge fund. He owns the damn one of the owners who runs the fund that the money was put into. So therefore, he is going to receive large payments from it. As it matures, as the investment matures, he will receive large windfalls of money. He knows that, and if the reporter had a lick of sense in her head, she would know that. But she let it slide, and Biden lied. And he knows he's lying. Didn't fool me. James O'Keefe has let go of part 2 of his expose on CNN, and in this particular episode we find out that CNN is totally behind Warren, Liawatha. They're all in for Liawatha. We know that they don't like Tulsi, we know that they don't like Klobuchar, and they don't like Yang. Well, I can kind of understand those, Klobuchar and Yang. I can kind of understand why they don't like them. But they're all in for Warren, and they don't like Tulsi over there at CNN. We also learned from this episode that Zucker is pushing anchors over at CNN to do a segment on Kamala Legs in the Air Harris's statement where she was saying that Twitter should suspend Trump's account. So you have this call where Zucker is telling his reporters there, hey, you need to get on that, you need to do a story on that, you need to hit it hard. Kamala Harris is saying that Trump, he should have his Twitter account suspended. Yeah, it's not going to happen, they're not going to do it, but it makes a great story. Get on it and stay on it. Keep pushing it. That's how bad this guy hates Trump. Another interesting development came out of the UK today. We had Queen Elizabeth II making I think she was actually speaking to the Parliament, and she was basically saying that she supports Brexit and believes that they should have the Brexit on October 31st, and that the voices of the voters should be recognized, and that they should go ahead with the Brexit, and that's her official position and the official position of the British government. Now, all this is happening at the same time that we're getting media reports that Boris Johnson and the European Union heads may have some kind of a deal, and it has to do with Northern Ireland, how to deal with that situation. And it's not clear at this point. I haven't been able to dig into that enough to understand if it's good or bad, if it's what it is. But it doesn't sound like no deal Brexit. I know that. So it's hard to know right now exactly what's going on with it. But ultimately, whatever it is, Boris Johnson, whatever deal he's got with his plan with the EU, he still has to come back, and it has to be voted on in Parliament. Now, maybe that's the reason that the Queen made her speech, was to basically say to those members, when Boris comes back, he's going to come back with the deal. You may not like the deal, but I expect you to vote for it and put this thing to an end. That's my take. I could be wrong. I don't live in the UK, but that's my take on it. And whether or not it's a good deal or a bad deal, I don't know. We will have to wait and see. I know that Nigel Farage is very skeptical about any deal that Boris might be cutting with the EU. And I don't blame him. I would be feeling exactly the same. I think the best thing they could do is a no-deal Brexit. The Northern Ireland problem is an issue, but I think it should be dealt with after Brexit. But anyway, we will continue to follow that because we're getting down to the wire. It's getting close to October 31st, and something has got to give on Brexit. We're hearing now that the IG report, which was supposed to be coming out this week, this Friday, the 18th, we're hearing now that it is going to be delayed again. And it's likely being delayed because of the arguing over redactions. And apparently it's the FBI and the CIA who are trying to get more stuff redacted. This is another thing. I mean, William Barr was given full authority by the President of the United States. He's got total final word say on this. And why he's letting this nonsense go on is beyond me. The President has given him that authority to decide what gets declassified, what gets released, what doesn't get released. He's got full authority. He's been given the President's authority. And he's letting himself be slapped around by Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray and Gina Haspel, who's obviously working for Mr. Potato Head and the deep state. So that's what frustrates me about Barr. He's got all this authority, all this power. The President gave him incredible power and authority what no Attorney General has ever been given before that I know of, to completely control everything regarding declassification of all the documents in and around the Russia, Ukraine, whatever, investigations. And he's not asserting the authority he's been given. Now, given the seriousness of the situation, you would think that he would act, decisively and urgently in the matter. But that's not what we see happening, because clearly he's fighting with these people. So I just don't get it. I don't get it. I would say, hey, I'm the Attorney General. The President's given me this authority. I'm going to use it. Here's what's going to be released, and it's going to be released on the 18th, and that's it. You may not like it, Gina. You may not like it, No Shit Sherlock, but that's what's going to happen. If you don't like it, suck it up. Leave if you don't like it. Don't let the door hit you in the ass on the way out. That's what I would say, but then again, that's me. Then again, what do we have next? Oh, yes. It appears that the crazy walrus, John Bolton, expressed concerns with pressuring Ukraine for political information, according to Fiona Hill, the person who testified yesterday to Congress. She says that Bolton, essentially Bolton snitched to Hill. It was Bolton who snitched to Fiona Hill. She is, of course, a senior director for European and Russian affairs. She says that Bolton complained about the ambassador Sondland, Mick Mulvaney, and Giuliani. So here's the crazy walrus, John Bolton, appears to be the snitch who snitched to Fiona Hill, who testified in front of Congress yesterday, who's an anti-Trumper. who worked for George Soros and is part of the CFR. Of course, Bolton's CFR as well. And so it looks like that the Walrus may have had something to do with sort of initiating at least this witness and having some role to play in this whole scheme that's being run. This is why me and many of you didn't like John Bolton, the crazy walrus. He'll stab you in the back every time, man. We now have more evidence that Eric Ciaramella is Schiff's whistleblower, or so-called whistleblower. More evidence that Eric Ciaramella is Schiff's whistleblower. Ciaramella had dinner in Washington, D.C. a couple weeks before the 2016 election. The people who attended that dinner with Ciaramella a couple weeks before the 2016 election were Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, John Kerry, Loretta Lynch, John Podesta, Tony Podesta, Valerie Jarrett, Samantha Powers, John Brennan, James Comey, and Clapper, the idiot Clapper. The dinner was an actual lunch. Actually, it was a luncheon. It was an official luncheon dinner at the White House, I believe, or for the White House. It was held on Tuesday, October 18th, 2016. Almost, yeah, this Friday would be October the 18th of 2019, so almost exactly 3 years ago. This was an official luncheon to honor Matteo Renzi, the Italian prime minister at that time, who we now believe was involved in the coup. So here they're having this official luncheon to honor Matteo Renzi and all the people whose names I just mentioned, all part of the coup, were there at that luncheon. Just 3 weeks prior to the vote in November of 2016. This meeting was held, luncheon was held on October 18th to honor Matteo Renzi, and I just listed all the people who were there, and probably some others. All part of the coup plotters. But in addition to John Brennan, we also had Samantha Powers. We had Eric Ciaramella was, of course, there, and so was his boss, Charles Kupchan. So Eric Ciaramella was at that luncheon where they were honoring Matteo Renzi with all the deep state coup plotters 3 weeks before the election in 2016. Harry Reid, dingy Harry Reid, is warning the Democrats that Trump is very, very smart. And if you underestimate him, he will beat you. And he will beat you bad. I agree with Harry Reid. Trump is going to beat the demo commies in 2020. And yes, he is going to beat them bad. I'm going to go on record and say Trump's going to carry 400 points in the Electoral College. 400. Biden has now dropped down to third place in the latest polling. Of course, this is just a single poll, George Washington University poll. I don't like to go with one poll, but we keep seeing these individual polls. I'll have to go back to RCP and look at the average. Maybe Sunday I'll get around to it. It takes a little time to go through that, but I'll have to go back and look at RCP average and see exactly where we are. It's been about 2 or 3 weeks since I've looked at that. But we keep getting these individual polls coming out, and they keep showing Biden dropping into second and third. This one has him dropping into third. And then we get Biden coming out yesterday saying that if he is elected, he will not pardon Trump. Remember that, Trump, and remember that, Attorney General Barr and Mr. Durham. Biden says if elected, he won't pardon Trump. And every Democrat in Congress and in the media for the past 6 months has been saying that no one is above the law. Keep all that in mind if and when you uncover the coup plot. So now Trump knows that Biden would not pardon him. I certainly hope when the time comes that Trump does not pardon Biden or Obama or anyone else. The Democrats are debating right now and nobody really gives a damn. I'll watch the lowlights tomorrow for laughs and let you know what happened, but I'm not going to watch it. Thank you so much for tuning in. You guys have a good night. We'll see you. Bye.